Sometimes it feels like DNA gets all the credit. Yes, the structure of DNA is amazing. It has a beautiful double helix structure, a twisted ladder. It has its own emoji. DNA stores genetic information and codes for your traits. However, sometimes what gets left out is how important RNA is. Without RNA, you actually couldn't get that genetic message out to your cells so that they can start producing proteins. We talk about this in protein synthesis. RNA is a very important biomolecule, just as important as DNA. In fact, RNA is even hypothesized as coming first, before DNA, in the RNA world hypothesis, something we need to make a separate video about. So let's compare and contrast DNA with RNA. First, you will find DNA and RNA in all living organisms. In eukaryotic cells, DNA tends to be found in the nucleus, while you can find RNA both inside and outside of the nucleus. Prokaryotic cells don't have a nucleus. Both DNA and RNA are nucleic acids, which are a type of biomolecule. Nucleic acids have a monomer, which, if you remember from our biomolecules video, a monomer is a building block. The monomer for nucleic acids is a nucleotide, so both DNA and RNA have nucleotides. The nucleotides of both RNA and DNA have 3 parts: a phosphate, sugar, and a base. Let's draw 6 nucleotides of DNA and 6 nucleotides of RNA. DNA is generally double-stranded, and if focusing on these 2 strands of nucleotides here, you can see they run anti-parallel to each other. RNA is generally single-stranded, so you are just seeing one strand here. The sugar in DNA is deoxyribose, and the sugar in RNA is ribose. This makes sense because DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. That's helpful to know because the deoxyribose is a sugar, and nucleic acid is that type of biomolecule it is. RNA stands for ribonucleic acid, as its sugar is ribose. The bases in DNA are adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine. It helps to remember the popular mnemonic apples in the tree. That helps you remember that A goes with T, and car in the garage, so C goes with G, to understand how DNA bases pair. The bases in RNA are adenine, uracil, guanine, and cytosine. Notice the different one? It's uracil. So you have to change that popular mnemonic device here. Instead of apples in the tree, maybe the apples are under. Car in the garage still works, though. We mentioned earlier that DNA codes for your traits, but it couldn't do that without RNA's help. In our protein synthesis video, we talk about 3 different types of RNA and their very important roles. mRNA, which stands for messenger RNA, mRNA's job is to carry a message based off of the DNA. In eukaryotic cells, DNA generally stays in the nucleus, but mRNA has the ability to leave the nucleus to take the message to a ribosome. Ribosomes make protein, and RNA is actually a major component of ribosomes. This type of RNA is called rRNA, which stands for ribosomal RNA. Finally, we discussed transfer RNA, or abbreviated tRNA. Its job is to transfer amino acids to match the correct mRNA codon. Codon charts using mRNA codons have been developed so that you can actually see which amino acid is brought for each mRNA codon.